We're back. Welcome back, y'all. Can you believe that this is season 3 of Exhaled Hope? Girl, I know I can't. Well, hey, if you're new here, I was raised with good manners, so allow me to reintroduce myself. Hey, y'all, I'm Senecca, and this is Exhaled Hope, where we have real conversations about faith in the middle of the mess. No hype, no guilt, no pretending we have it all together. Just truth that leaves us with real hope. Y'all, speaking of introductions, introducing yourself can be a funny thing. Depending on your personality, an introduction can feel like a regular day or a new opportunity for connection. Or it can be one of those things that you dread and try to avoid at all costs. I've shared with y'all before that I am an introvert with an extrovert lifestyle. So I find myself in situations where introductions are necessary more than I'd probably choose. And even with an uncommon name like Senecca, telling someone my name doesn't bother me anymore. The question that used to really annoy me was, what do you do? Or the softer version, tell me a little bit about yourself. That question bothered me so much. But you know why it bothered me? Because what they were really asking me was, who are you? Can we talk about it? Let me give you an example. There was one time I got invited on a trip, an amazing trip, and it was a mixed group of people. Some of them I was familiar with, but I wouldn't consider us friends. And then there were those I'd never met before. I only really knew the host. And one of the other women that were on the trip, I guess you could say we had similar circles. We knew the outside layer of each other, that stuff that anybody who's been around you 5 or 6 times could tell you. And she'll deny this, but she's an extrovert. And on this trip, my introverted self made the mistake. And I sat down next to her for an hour-long bus ride. Okay. And somewhere in that hour, she turned to me and said, Senecca, what's your story? Child, I was like, I know she didn't. And if I'm honest, part of why that question used to get under my skin is because I wasn't totally sure who I was becoming yet. I knew who I used to be. I knew that I wasn't her anymore. And I hadn't quite met the person who I was turning into. Side note, yes, I am grateful for that question now because we have built a great friendship from that conversation. But in the moment, I gave her a side eye. But her question was just a nicer way of saying or asking the same thing. Who are you? And here's the question I have for us. When somebody asks you at work, at church, on a random bus ride with folks that you barely know, who you are, what do you reach for? Is it what you do or what you have accomplished? Or maybe it's the roles that you hold. Maybe you're a spouse or a sister or a brother or a CEO. Or maybe it's the job title, whatever that job title says that you are. And none of those are wrong, but none of them, I would argue, is the real answer. It's just that material that we've got closest to the surface and it's tangible. But the real answer is often harder to sit with. But there is someone who gives us insight to the true answer. My friend Paul, who opens up Ephesians with an answer to that question. And I would encourage you to go and read Ephesians 1. Because the way he answers this question isn't what most of us reach for. He doesn't say anything about our latest degree, our job promotions, or our commitment to our spouses or our friends or our family. He writes that God has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms. Not some, every. Before you've done anything in this letter that he's written, before there's any instruction on how to behave or perform, Paul points us to what is already true. God chose you before the world existed, which means before there was anything about you to evaluate, He predestined you for adoption. And adoption in that world wasn't this sentimental gesture. It was legal and permanent. Once you were in, you were in. There was no 90-day trial period, no return policy. And adoption doesn't just answer who you are now. It answers who gets to define you. Maybe you're a person who's quietly outgrown some rooms, some relationships, some versions of yourself everybody else got comfortable with. You already know what it's like to have people vote on who you're supposed to be. That old friend group, even the old church, and even your family who like the version of you that made sense to them, but not the one you're growing into. But Paul is saying adoption isn't a vote. Nobody else's memory of who you used to be gets a say in who God already said you are. Then a few verses later, he says, you have redemption. Plot twist. Your mess isn't disqualifying you. It's actually covered. And by the end of the chapter, Paul says you're sealed with the Holy Spirit. Y'all, that's a guarantee, a deposit, and proof that the rest of what's promised is coming. Chosen, adopted, redeemed, sealed. That's the real answer to who you are. Not your job, not your relationship status, not the season you're in right now that maybe doesn't make sense yet. Not even what the people who knew the old you think you still are. Can I keep it a buck? I think there are many of us in various places in our relationship with God who call ourselves Christ followers and don't know who we are. And as my grandmother's generation would say, your slip is showing. We know. It's obvious that we don't know who we are because we talk like we're chosen, but we don't walk in rooms like it. We talk like we've been forgiven, but we wear guilt like a bad tattoo, and we don't walk like we're redeemed. We can answer the role on Sunday morning and say, yes, we're adopted and chosen and redeemed, and still go back to answering, who are you? With a job title in the parking lot 5 minutes later. And that's exactly why you can pray for something like the job and you get it. Or maybe you're praying to leave singleness and you want to be married and you get the relationship. You get the answer you were begging God for and still feel off once it arrives. You know how I know? Because I've been there. I got the thing and it still didn't feel like I thought it would. And it's not because God didn't come through. It's because the prayer got answered and the identity question underneath it didn't. If you're building who you are on the circumstances, even the good ones, you're building on a ground that was never meant to hold that weight. Circumstances change, but being chosen doesn't. Nor does being adopted or being sealed by the promise of the Holy Spirit. Those things don't move with your mood. And the people who only knew the old version of you don't get a vote on the new one either. And listen, the enemy is not confused about who you are. He knows you're chosen. He knows you are adopted. He knows the seal is already on you and it is not coming off. What he's banking on is that you don't know it. Because anyone who doesn't know they're held is someone he can still shake. But a man or woman walking in the truth of what God already said about them, he can push all he wants, but he's not moving them from that grip. So let's make a game out of it. Just this week, take notice of every time you're asked to explain yourself, introduce yourself, or sum yourself up to somebody. Notice what you reach for first. You don't have to change what you say out loud. Just notice it. And to be clear, I'm not saying that the next time somebody asks you, what do? That you look them dead in the eye and say, I'm chosen. That'll get you some real interesting looks at your next networking event, okay? But this isn't about changing your answer. It's about changing what you're believing while you give it. What do you believe in your heart about who you are? And then privately ask yourself, what changes if I started from chosen instead? Not chosen because of what family you were born into or your accomplishments, but chosen before any of that. What if you started from the fact that you were adopted in permanently, that you've been redeemed instead of disqualified, and that all of it has been sealed, that you are not on a trial period? How would you reintroduce yourself? Sit with that this week. Ask yourself, who am I really? And whose voice have I been letting answer instead of God's? All right, y'all, that's episode 1 of season 3 in the books. I still cannot believe this is season 3. God is blowing my mind. And I'm so glad that you're here with me to experience it and witness it. So listen, if you know somebody who needs to sit with this "who are you" question, send them this episode right now. Don't wait, because you're going to forget. So go on and send it now. Hit the share. Yeah, that's the right button. Hit it. All right. And I'll see y'all next week with another episode.